Hi, everybody. My name is Mark Nowak. I'm director of the MFA program at Manhattanville College and hosting this great panel today. On behalf of the 3,400 writers, translators, and editors of PEN, it's our great pleasure to welcome you to the 8th annual PEN World Voices Festival of International Literature. I'd like to take a moment to thank the festival sponsors and supporters, without whose generosity none of this would be possible, as well as the Standard and the Public Theater, which are serving as the festival's hubs this year. I'd like to also thank the more than 100 volunteers who have given their time to help us. Before I introduce each of today's guests, please turn off all things in your possession which beep, ring, buzz, play musical tunes, or squeal. Even if you think you've turned them off, there's always one that rings, so please check again. For today's program, we have actually a number of phenomenal writers. I'll step up and introduce each one individually. Our first reader today is Tararith Ko, who is a Cambodian poet, publisher, and educator who has been instrumental in the founding of PEN Cambodia. Co-founder of the Nauhak Literature Project and an affiliated journal that published fiction, essays, poetry, sometimes critical of the Cambodian government. Ko was subjected to threatening anonymous phone calls and emailed death threats, which forced him to resign from the project in January of 2010. He was a fellow at Harvard last academic year, hosted by the Department of Comparative Literature, and he now teaches the Khmer language and will be developing a program in Khmer language and literature at Middlesex Community College. He's joined by his translator, Aisha Down. Please welcome them. Thank you.
So, the inspiration, I think, for bringing Tararith here is that in Cambodia, he was a social critic, and he learned a great deal about the people from his work as a writer and a publisher, but also he worked for a while as a taxi driver. He drove a motorcycle taxi. And while he doesn't have any poems having to do with taxi driving specifically, we did bring to read an excerpt of his fiction, which maybe shows some of life in Cambodia from the perspective of a taxi driver and someone in a taxi. So without further ado. The journey to the north made me depressed in my heart. I made it in a crowded bus, so tightly packed that the people in it formed nearly a solid human mass. The road was bumpy and ill kept up. I was frequently close to vomiting. I was moreover fed up again and again with all the illegal checkpoints. Whenever we crossed a bridge, there would be soldiers coming to stop us. They would demand money as if we owed it to them whenever they reached us. Then sometimes they would go on to threaten us and to menace the person driving the taxi. They had weapons in their hands and on shoulder straps, and their waists were wrapped with ammunition. They would scream at us loudly, as if to stop a thief. The person driving the taxi followed National Highways 5 and 6. I don't think he made any money at all. He had to spend the fares on gas, which was getting expensive. He had to pay his parking costs to the bus station and give money to the traffic police along the road to every province, as well as to the soldiers at the illegal checkpoints, which had been set up nearly continuously along every highway in the country. Whenever I saw our traffic police demanding cash from travelers whose motor vehicles were missing a license plate, or stiffing peasants who were riding on a vehicle facing the wrong way, ox carts or motos, I felt no grief or pity. These are the usual stories of those who live in the city. I saw corruption in every public gathering place in our urban areas when I studied in secondary school, and before that, when my mother had started to read newspapers which carried the stories of illegal checkpoints. But here, there were so many illegal checkpoints that I felt myself pitying our driver. He made no money at all. Vast, blinding fields of rice stretched hot and cracked with the sun. They reached from one corner of the eye to the other in the gaps between habitations. The chips of flashing sun in the heat of the day brought tears to our eyes, as if in grief for the desolation. On some of the plains, there was not even a single tree for adornment. Beasts here were so skinny that we could not think but that their owners had abandoned them. Cows were surviving on the grass that had been left to them by the heat, shortened so far that they almost could not persist. This was a state of suffering, and for the first time I felt a deep pity in my heart toward the animals. Last year, the floods had risen and submerged many populated areas. And this year, the rains had stopped, the sun had baked and cracked the ground. How quickly the weather changes. Those who are unfortunate, those who are stranded in remote areas, must always stay so isolated. And then I think you were going to read a poem.
Okay. Thank you. I read my poem in the title Poor, and Isa will read in English. Yeah. កូនខ្ទមនៅក្បែរផ្លូវរថភ្លើងគឺលំនៅយើងនឹងឯងហើយគ្មានស្រែគ្មានភ្លឺធ្វើសោះឡើយចំឡាយគឺប្រឹងរងរៀងខ្លួនដីធ្លីគេរឹបទន្ទ្រានយកយើងអស់ជុំរោគរួងភៀខ្លួនគេដេញចាប់វាយគ្រោះផ្ទួនចិនយួនអង្រួនផែនដីខ្មែរឥឡូវគេដេញសារជាថ្មីយើងម្ចាំងទឹកដីយំអត់លហាជ្រកតាមប្រទេសជាតិខាងក្បែរធ្វើការផងដែរសម្រាប់រួង Yeah, thank you.
So the translation of this poem is as follows. Poor. That tiny hut there near the railroad, that's it. That's our dwelling. You'll find no rice there, no lights, no levee. The place is exhausted. You'll find nothing at all. The answer is to struggle, each for himself. When they take the land, to take your body and flee. But they hunt you still, the Chinese, the Yun. They keep at the land like sharks at your borders. The day came when the chase got hungry. We lost the land we owned, we wept, then left it, went next door for shelter, thinking we'd do anything to live. We crossed in silence into Thai country. The fields were wide and we sought help from chance. This nation, we said, will prove as great as its name, and hoped for someone to save our lives. There are 10,000 who depend on Thailand, 10,000 who do anything at all. And not a one has any time. Life is an annoyance, and we are chained to it. And when we go, we know it's illegal. We know of police, of those who follow after. We go anyway. We go for the money. We go because we are Khmer. Sometimes they mock you. Sometimes they tell you that you come from dogs. We know this already. We still take their money. And in Cambodia, the men still talk, and the people still fight, and the citizens don't think, and the state's an old car that you drive when you need it. And the poor persist in trying to live, and the poor keep living place after place. We find our homes in any direction. Our shadow of pain comes trailing after.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to give a brief word about the next three readers and the workshop that we put together through the Penn World Voices Festival. For about the past decade or so, I've been leading workshops with different trade unions and workers groups, with workers at a closing Ford plant and Ford workers at 2 plants in South Africa, with a group of Muslim and Somali nurses last year for the Penn World Voices Festival, with a number of people from Domestic Workers United. And all of them, including this one, have produced really some quite phenomenal poetry, as we'll hear in a moment. So today's first reader is Seth Goldman. Seth was born in East New York, a Brooklyn hood where, he says, the tough Jews are from. He grew up in East New York and Rosedale, Queens, and has lived in Greenwich Village for 25 years. Prior to his appearance here tonight at Joe's Pub, he was sequestered for the television show The Amazing Race. Seth Goldman.
Thank you. Prior, about 4 years ago, John McDonough and I were sequestered and in a hotel room together for 7 long days. Thanks for coming, and I'm going to read this first thing. It's about my favorite CEO. It's called A Tune for Lloyd Blankfein in the key of F, U. Hitler is dead, and you're still here. Economic troubles ahead, and you're still here. Hurricane Sandy hit. 200 West Street is still lit. You're still here. Profiting from invasion and war, Davidson, John, and I are the standard and poor. Bailouts, bonuses, corporate welfare, orange alert, say a prayer, you're still here. A Nebush like you, a Blankfein, grew up an observant Jew. Now even Larry and Fran Fine have washed their hands of you. You're still here. Driving 80 hours a week, the future looks bleak. Got no health care, bad back, heart scare. You're still here. Hipster vomits on my back seat. Occupy Wall Street, and you're still here. Medallion owners want to steal our raise back to their old greedy ways. Madoff's in the joint. The feds made their point. You're still here. The fellows in Washington and men of your kind are gutless apes with worthless minds. They're still here. Can't save a dime, can't pay the bills on time. You're still here. Harassed by the TLC, they're on their toes, better keep a clean nose. Stress is in store. I'm sorry. You're still here after the keep a clean nose, you're still here. Credit card machine woes, that's just the way it goes. Bike messenger crashes into my door, more stress is in store. Gas prices way up, license renewal, got a piss in a cup. Blankfein, your judgment stinks. Do you have to piss in a cup? You're still here. Men of your ilk are just out to bilk. taxi drivers provide a service to our beloved city. And Goldman Sachs, isn't it a pity you're still here? Easily pleased, that's good. Thank you. Wow. Okay, keep going? Roll away, all right. I'd like to dedicate this to Mel Brooks. I think he might be here tonight. Hello, Mel. It's a poem about my neighborhood. Each morning at 5 a.m., I pick up my cab and head south. An imaginary breeze gently guiding me to the neighborhood I've lived for over 25 years. It has changed less than other neighborhoods. Some favorite odd stores and delicious restaurants remain. And the air smells cleaner. The toilet is familiar. I pick up charismatic young people. I'm like a farmer tending to drunken crops. I tend to their sometimes demanding, but usually harmless requests, and deliver them quickly and safely to their apartments, usually in Brooklyn. In the meatpacking district, meat is still delivered from Jersey farms, but the all-night girls, the chicks with dicks of yesterday, have been replaced with sexy hotels and clubs. To the tourists and sexpots, I am a welcome sight. The sage, old-time Greenwich Village residents awaken early, precious dogs to walk, cats to feed. I crave the ordinary early in my shift. The smell of eggs and coffee at the 13th Street Deli, fortification for the insane driving marathon, ever-changing. But it commences here at dawn in the village. Garbage trucks arrive, fat and obnoxious, a nuisance for the day driver. The smell like decomp, never-ending NYU construction, expansion. The wild driving of some taxi drivers, so empty. Many in Greenwich Village start their day in the late morning. When I like to drive these little winding streets, hungry for fares, I travel northwest on West 4th Street, southeast on Bleecker, giving me solace from cold, unforgiving Midtown. After work in the afternoon, I love to stroll along Waverly Place, the loopy street cutting southeast past 7th Avenue South. I walk towards the absurd corner of Waverly Place and Waverly Place. I have a glass of whiskey at Julius's Bar on 10th Street, across from the Three Lives bookstore. I know the cozy side of the village. These old streets become robust at twilight. Restaurants filled, bars loaded. I recharge in bed after supper, dreaming of passengers who might have been, till I walk the quiet streets at 4 a.m. once again, past the handsome brownstones on Washington Square North. George Washington proudly stands under the arch, looking splendid in his Revolutionary War uniform. And on top of the grand arch, built 100 years after George's inauguration, reads his words so bright: "Let us raise a standard to which the wise and the honest can repair." An occasional empty taxi slowly passes. The driver looks longingly at me, but I head down into the West 4th Street subway for the 20-minute ride to pick up my cab. Okay, and this one, this is, well, let me say to any new drivers out there, don't do it. You have your whole life ahead of you. But for purposes of this event, I wrote this to new drivers. Let your heart soar. Anything can and will happen. Walk the streets of Greenwich Village. Walk the streets of the financial district. You will see, hear, feel, and smell the wonders of dirty old New York. Anything can and will happen. Dignity, always dignity. Some men are not their best behind the wheel of a car. Wish to feel the heartbeat of the big, bad city? You are doing the right job. You make this splendid town rumble. Don't let the bastard people get you down. Drive carefully. The bloated TLC officers are watching, looking to take your money, eat your honey. Anything can and will happen. You will spend so much time alone, deep within your own mind. Control your emotions. It is down to you. All that meat and no potatoes just ain't right, like green tomatoes. So be strong. This job is for the hardy, not the faint. Anything can and will happen. Enjoy the attractive passengers who appreciate your work. Engage. Do things differently each day. Drive. Don't sit on taxi lines unless you are tired. Waiting drains your energy. If you wait at LaGuardia Airport, talk with other drivers. The workforce is the most diverse on the planet. Be prideful. We are the strongest, bravest taxi drivers in the world. Other than Cambodians, of course. Join the union and fight for your fellow workers. Owners treat us as if we work in a sweatshop on wheels. Go to the hearings at the Taxi and Limousine Commission. Anything can and will happen. Spend your hard-earned cash as if you are voting. Vote for the small business. Vote for the farmers markets. Eat local produce. It tastes yummy, packed with nutrients, and you will need all of them for your 12-hour shift. Struggle. It is the struggle we live for. Anything can and will happen. Drink coffee, but remember, what goes up must come down. New Yorkers enjoy their morning taxi ride, their evening ride to the theater, their safe 2 a.m. ride home after one too many. The minority are mean folk and belong in another place. Whisk them away to the cornfields of your mind after you drop them off quickly and safely. Anything can and will happen. Hug someone you love after your shift, because you feel like you've been cooped up on an island for much too long. Listen to your favorite music. Avoid right-wing AM radio. It will hit you. It will hurt you. It will alienate you. Make nice at a coffee shop or a saloon. Tip the waitress or barman well, because you're going to need their toilet. Work hard as if each day is your last, and one day you'll be right. Anything can and will happen. Thank you. And this is a poem untitled with just a kind of a regular morning fare that I would get. I begin the day shift from Long Island City, Queens, and travel to Manhattan over the 59th Street Bridge. Not feeling groovy. 4:50 a.m. The full moon kisses me, and the skyline is illuminated. I need to see the river on the way down to the village. Unless I pick up a fare on East 62nd Street, I get on the southbound FDR Drive to Houston Street. On steamy summer mornings, I can smell the river. Smells like victory. I head west on Houston Street, the taxi singing, swinging, and rattling and rolling over the tortured pavement. I stop at the Korean deli on Avenue A, called Gracefully. The perky Korean woman, nicknamed Princess, greets me. You need singles? Yes, you are too good to me, thank you. I pay for my black coffee, and as I enter my taxi, a young man yells, "Park Slope? Let's go." 13th Street and 5th Avenue, how's it going? It sucks to work for a living. I'm fucked up, man. So am I, pal, so am I. I take the upper level of the Manhattan Bridge, heading east. Hello, Brooklyn, the borough of my birth. We cross the East River. I turn up the radio, and it's Roy Eldridge with Anita O'Day. Their hit song, Drop Me Off in Harlem. Blow, Roy, blow, she cries. The jazz, coffee, and full moon has my spirits soaring. I drive faster. The young man asked me about Bushwick. I need to move because Park Slope is getting too expensive. Bushwick is more affordable, and it is next to my hood, East New York, as we've already found out where the tough Jews are from. That's real affordable. I smell the booze on him, and I am envious. To be young and to be high. I get on the BQE, and my buddy, the river, is guiding me south. How long you been driving? Since 1951. That's a long time, man. I head onto Hamilton Avenue and turn east on 14th Street, a typical Park Slope street where attached houses mingle with older brownstones. I weave around garbage that has blown onto the street as Coleman Hawkins blows his horn. I love this dirty town. We barrel onto 5th Avenue and up to 13th Street. It is $24. I hear the sweet sound of cash. The marriage of the credit card machine and drunks stinks. He hands me two 20s. Can I have 10? I give him his change, thank him, and he is on his way. Good to get that first fare. Of course, your first is always the most special. I open the back windows to clear the air. It is 10 minutes before 6, about 10 more hours of driving, and I head back towards the river. Thank you.
I'm going to stand.
All right, someone's going to stand besides me. Davidson Garrett is a native of Shreveport, Louisiana. He moved to New York in 1972 to train for the theater at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, and he's a proud graduate of the City College of New York. Two of his most memorable life experiences have been finishing 4 New York City marathons and attending Dame Joan Sutherland's New York farewell at the Metropolitan Opera House. Davidson got his hack license in 1978, and this month he celebrates his 35th year driving a yellow cab, full-time, part-time, daytime, and nighttime to help subsidize his art. Davidson Garrett.
I told Mark that I sit 60 hours a week, so I wanted to stand. We read a wonderful poem by the Nicaraguan poet Ernesto Cardenal, and we were given an assignment to try to remember exactly what things look like in our life as we're doing our job. So this is a prose piece from that exercise. Just another shift. Late wintry afternoon, shrouded by a temperamental gray sky. Sleet pelts the sidewalks of Manhattan's Upper East Side. I'm snug behind the steering wheel of my yellow taxi, driving southerly down York Avenue, beginning my 12-hour shift, searching for my first fare. Pedestrians wrapped in thick coats scurry across intersections, anxious to arrive at their overpriced apartments. Nannies in plastic ponchos roll massive prams in front of the cab as I wait for red lights to blink back to green. Another urban day, ending with icy dusk descending. My 60-year-old body, tired and creaky from the previous night's work. I sip a hot cup of coffee, which perfumes the musty smell of the auto's interior. Depressed at the thought of the drudgery ahead, I switch to WQXR on the dashboard radio, and I am serenaded by a Bach violin sonata. Tiny pellets of hail pouncing on the hood accompany Johann Sebastian with natural counterpoint. It is rush hour, but no one is rushing to grab my cab. I drive past the Episcopal Church of the Epiphany, wishing an epiphany would manifest in my repetitive life. Same old back and forth each evening. I've become a burned-out automaton, yearning for the adventurous excitement of my youth, but understanding this is only the continuous folly of my mind. Luckily, before I get too down in the dumps with mental monologues, I spot a waving hand attached to a long arm between two parked vehicles, hailing a taxi. I screech my brakes in front of a woman who resembles Fran Dresser, clad in a faded mink. Opening my right automatic window to illegally ask her destination, she inquires with a voice that sounds like fingernails on a chalkboard. "Will you please take me and my mother to Queens? My mother's in a wheelchair." My heart sinks. Queens at rush hour, a cabbie's nightmare, bumper-to-bumper traffic, and most likely a return without a fare, an empty back seat. I wince at this potential loss of income. However, being the so-called professional that I am, I grudgingly say yes. Putting the car in park, I pop open the battery-powered trunk to load the wheelchair. Finally, I emerge into February's blustery air, dressed in khakis and a checkered shirt. On the sidewalk, seated in a clunky wheelchair, swathed in a quilted blanket, an ancient-looking white woman sneers. Her face reeks of bitterness under gray hair, fizzled by drizzle. Glaring at me with contempt as I walk toward her, the middle-aged daughter stands on one side, smiling to assure this grim mother I'm there to assist. Her offspring clutches one of her frail arms as I lift the other. On the count of 3, we hoist this bag of bones onto her wobbling feet. She shrieks like a character out of a Greek tragedy, "You're hurting me!" Step by step, off the half-foot curb, we move Hecuba into the right rear door of the taxi. We spin her around rump first. She plops her butt onto the back seat, moaning with pain. I place her feet carefully onto the rubber-matted floor. My not-so-happy helper enters on the opposite side after waiting for the busy traffic to clear. With great struggle, I stuffed the wheelchair in the Crown Victoria's tight trunk, barely able to shut the top. Seated back in my cushioned driver's seat, out of breath and wet from sleet, hail, slush, the younger woman trumpets through the plexiglass partition window, Senna Boulevard and 48th Avenue. Off we go. Reluctantly, I'm ready to navigate these out-of-sorts passengers over the newly named Ed Koch Bridge. Like a tortoise, the worn Ford maneuvers slowly down the slippery street, weaving past buses and double-parked SUVs. With the meter activated, taxi TV blares from the rear of the cab with Al Roker jabbering a weather update. Frustration revisits me as I inwardly bitch about this unlucky trip. Horns honk all around me. Road rage by pissed-off commuters longing to get home to the suburbs. I breathe deeply and remember that I'm doing a good deed by helping these poor women out of the freezing wind. Darkness has arrived, and I see nothing but brake lights ahead through my foggy windshield, beaten by manic wipers. Inch by inch, with tires married to the asphalt, we cascade onto the upper ramp of the former Queensboro Bridge, my headlights glowing brightly through snowflakes surrounding us on this steel behemoth. Behind my head, a fight ensues, a family feud. Mother Sunshine cries out, "Who's paying for all these damn doctor bills?" With grit and underlying resentment, the nasal voice seated next to her exclaims, "Ma, I told you 1,000,000 times. Medicare, Medicare, Medicare!" We are finally welcomed by the glimmering billboards surrounding Queens Plaza as we sharply turn onto Jackson Avenue toward Hunters Point. Arriving at one of those ugly new condos in Long Island City, bordering the East River, I slip into a circular driveway. With numbed legs, I slowly exit and retrieve the wheelchair, supporting the invalid out of the taxi with tender care, hoping she won't break her weakened hips. Her patient child hands me lovely cash, including a nice tip for the ride. I help stone-faced Mama back into her steel stroller. I then whisper to her kin, "You're a very good daughter. Do you have any help?" She quips, "I got 2 good-for-nothing brothers that don't do shit." Heading back to the Enchanted Island. Heading back to the Enchanted Island, I give myself a pat on the back, reflecting about my act of charity. It was my Mother Teresa moment. I've become an ambulance of mercy. Quickly, without kidding myself, I return to reality. Mother Teresa helped out of love. I did it for $1 and for fear of being reported to the TLC. Surprisingly, I find myself feeling compassionate for the 2 brothers rather than the devoted daughter. I ponder how taxi driving brings out the worst in me while scouting for my next fare. Thank you. Thank you. In the workshop, we read a wonderful poem by the fabulous South African poet Dennis Brutus entitled Sequence for South Africa. And there are several sections of the poem. And what I got from the poem was really about loss. And so this is what I came up with for myself in my own situation. Manhattan residences of certain classy women who have influenced this taxi driver's life. Number 1, 9 Van Dam Street. As a rookie cabbie, during times of needed whimsy, I often circled and circled this residential address, seriously daydreaming, even though the sun had long set. My eyes beheld a charming federal townhouse constructed of red brick, nestled in a row of townhouses juxtaposed with industrial residences and structures. A teeny-weeny block sandwiched between 6th Avenue and Varick. Some referred to this vicinity as Soho, but historically incorrect. It was really the south side of Greenwich Village. The slender home boasted a bright white front door with a golden slot for mail, an inviting entrance to greet invited visitors, which did not include me. My car's tempo andante, as I snooped with devotion, gazing at this 3-story abode, aware one of the greatest operatic sopranos of all time vocalized behind those walls. Her talkative neighbor, who hailed me once, informed me there was a garden behind 9, where from a kitchen window she witnessed this musical icon digging into the downtown earth, planting seeds for the coming spring. I always idled my saffron sedan, staring out the dirty windshield when noticing lights gleaming through ivory shutters. I sensed the diva was in residence, imagining her ethereal voice singing arias from Verdi's La Forza del Destino. I would shout out loud, "Good evening, Leontine Price," as my car rumbled away into the stark darkness of midnight. 2. 32 East 64th Street, the Verona. For years, the queen bee of the arts lived and entertained in this swanky Italian Renaissance-style cooperative. Modeled after the Strozzi Palace in Firenze, this Madison Avenue copy lies smack dab in the silk stocking district. A green canopy flanked by ornate lamppost shields wrought iron doors opening to a lobby dominated by a marble staircase evoking a movie set from a Busby Berkeley extravaganza. Flying past in my yellow canary on many harried evenings, I lovingly envisioned Kitty Carlisle Hart descending down those rhapsodic stairs, dressed to the nines to class up our gritty city. How hollow my gut feels these last few years, sputtering by in my office on wheels, mindful the gracious lady who was emblematic of New York's artsy flair, no longer resides there, but instead warbles, smoke gets in your eyes for the showbiz angels up in Broadway heaven. 1040 Fifth Avenue. You were my childhood, Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, such a rarefied first lady, glamming up television news, an inspiration for a gay boy harboring fanciful aspirations, stuck in the hinterland of Louisiana. How I still remember images of you at the funeral, that long black mantilla covering your grief-stricken face. Even at my young age, I silently mourned as you orchestrated your grave loss through dignified ritual. Here in the Big Apple, my destiny reduced me to a hack's life, struggling in my own tragedy of unfulfilled dreams. For years, my cab whizzed by the elegant edifice of your apartment house, gracing the corner of Fifth Avenue and East 85th. Oodles of times I prayed your uniformed doorman might flag me down, and bingo, your celebrated self glitz up my back seat. And then, out of my adoring lips, admiration and praise would trippingly roll off my tongue. For your sake, you were spared. What a ritzy neighborhood you inhabited in your editorial days, but quite fitting for Jackie O. Just a block from the cream-colored Metropolitan Museum of Art, and across the street from Manhattan's Emerald Oasis, Central Park, where you jogged around the skylined reservoir, appropriately renamed in your honor. 2 weeks before your death, as I was trapped in southbound traffic passing your regal home, I peered westward, saw you resting on a park bench shaded by leafy trees. Stoically beside you, your companion, Maurice Templesman, protected you from the ogling likes of me. Overblown sunglasses hid your forlorn eyes, but I knew it was definitely you. You appeared tranquil, at peace in the warm rays of afternoon sun. My brain's black and white camera captured this snapshot for my own eternity. I should have double parked to say hello, but unfortunately, I couldn't stop my vehicle in a busy bus lane. Sorry, I didn't risk a ticket now. These days, I buzz by your former dwelling place, recalling you with wistful affection. Sometimes I picture you as a diaphanous ghost waving an arm for a taxi. Of course, your apparition is always adorned in a smart Lily Pulitzer day dress. For me, an era of our town gone forever, except in my memory's scrapbook. Thank you. Thank you. For my final selection, I'm going to read a poem about last autumn for all of us. driving my taxi after Sandy's wrath, November 2nd, 2012. Before dawn's first naked streak, I spin wheels in the financial district, a corporate neighborhood, powerless, moonless, blocks and blocks of pitch blackness. Barely seeing my hands before me, my humming motor invades the silence as high beams of the intrepid cab guide me through this surrealistic maze, sadistically humbled by Mother Nature. South Street Seaport destroyed, flooded by a river's angry surge. Skyscrapers appear like charcoal etchings, lifeless in the hour when werewolves roam. Subways sleep, farting buses non-existent. A few brave stick figures stumble on invisible curbs, cautiously traversing crosswalks bereft of working traffic signals. This high-horse town brought down to its knees, the endless electricity of Lower Manhattan burned out from a flaming explosion, mangling Cod Ed's East Village substation. In somber reverie, I muse how quickly our lives suddenly shift, swift as waves of water sinking islands. A hipster on a bike with flashing beacons becomes my compass, heading me south on Broadway alongside Zuccotti Park, unoccupied except for a few defiant pigeons. I'm always aware devils can strike. I open my owl eyes wider for thieves who might rob me on not-so-busy Beaver Street. Car doors locked, I crawl at a snail's pace, desperately seeking souls, begging for a needed lift out of this science fiction horror created from a storm's violent fury. Who knew it would take a hurricane for this persnickety old cabbie to be thrilled for a fare to Brooklyn, where there is still remnants of civilization from flickering street lamps on Flatbush Avenue, until arriving at the devastated carnival of Coney Island, and not far beyond the annihilated Rockaway Peninsula. Thank you.
I get the most fares to Pastis here in the village, the meatpacking district, on 9th Avenue and Little West 12th Street. Well, that's very busy, so I don't know. But I drive during the day. Davidson drives at night, so, you know.
Well, Balthazar is very, very popular still. And if you got tons of money, they love to go to Danielle's, which used to be Le Cirque. And when I was a day driver, I would hang out in front of Le Cirque on East 65th Street, hoping Jackie O would come out. But I didn't get her.
We have time for like one or two more questions. If there are, yes. Well, A, you're looking at the participants in the workshop. B, there was another organization that we had planned to work with, and a little bit before we were starting, they pulled out. I don't know all the reasons. I wasn't in on the organizing of it, but that is, there was going to be more people, and this is who we have now. Last year for the domestic workers workshop, I think we had probably at any given time between 15 and 20 domestic workers who were part of it, and I think about 11 or so participated in the Penn Festival event.
Well, I mean,
I tried to recruit a lot of drivers, but I'll tell you the trouble. Cab drivers are exhausted. They're exhausted. And you tell them about an experience, and their eyes, you have to get toothpicks for their eyes at the end of a shift. And that was one reason a lot of them were reluctant, because they're very tired.
well, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week for a lot of the African and Asian immigrant drivers. You said 80-some-odd% of the drivers are from another country, and there's not a lot of time to get out of the cab and do things. You're sending money home to Ghana and to Bangladesh, and you're supporting yourself here. So the idea of this, I mean, it's great. For me, getting out of the cab and doing this, but the reality for a lot of the immigrant drivers, would be great to have 10 people with 10 different languages. We could have had that, but they just don't have the energy to take the time to do this because of the workload that they have to have.
Yeah, I would say too that when I was doing one of the early ones of these with Ford workers at a Ford plant that was closing, the most difficult job is finding a time for everybody to meet. And so in that instance at the Ford plant, what happened is that the workers who worked the day shift would take one of their breaks at the very end of their shift. Workers who worked the night shift would take one of their breaks at the very beginning of the shift. So we could have about a 40-minute period where everybody could meet together. So that was great for a poetry workshop, but imagine the difficulty of working all day on the line and losing one of your 20-minute breaks so you can come and write poetry. And I think it's a particular struggle here where people are working, as we've heard, these 12-hour shifts. Did you want to add something?
I was just going to say I'm here to represent.
She's the brown person. Yeah. Great.
As Seth said earlier, we have a lot of diversity. We have a Jew, an Irishman, and a gay. So you can't get any more diverse than that.
And they walk into Joe's pub and...
And on that note, thank you everybody for coming out.
Drive safely.